Good evening and welcome to the Night of the Storytellers. I'm Rebecca Vandermeulen, Executive Director of the J.C. Flowers Foundation. And tonight we will hear from 6 of the 199 graduates of our Circles of Support Raising My Voice and Raising My Voice Kin programs. In these programs, people who have returned home from prison or who have loved ones who are incarcerated learn to tell their story in a safe, supportive place, surrounded by people with shared experiences. Unfortunately, too many people who have experienced incarceration have had their own stories told by others who don't know them. And those supporting loved ones inside are often unheard. So Raising My Voice and Raising My Voice Kin help people gain speaking skills and name their own identities and their own stories. If you're interested in having a Raising My Voice graduate speak with your group, please contact me at rebecca@jcflowersfoundation.org. And with that, I'll turn it over to Rasan Johnson. He is a Raising My Voice graduate and Associate Director of the Community Safety for Neighbors in Action SOS Crown Heights, a project of the Center for Court Innovation. Rasan will be moderating our session tonight. Thank you, Rasan.
Thank you, Rebecca. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Night of the Storytellers, presented by Circles of Support and the J.C. Flowers Foundation. Tonight we have powerful speakers, and it's about their stories, it's about their strength, it's about their love and their gratitude. You'll have an opportunity, it won't be a question and answer session, but you can react virtually, snapping, clapping on screen to anything that has impacted you or touched you. Tonight is about the speakers and it's about their stories. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Rasheen Malik Morris.
Thank you. Through my eyes, my sister was like, Ty got locked up. For y'all that don't know, Ty's my little brother, who I feel I should have been there for more than I was. So it's a regret for me. Yes, I regret I wasn't there for him like I was supposed to be. And I'm hurt and upset with myself. I know I could have done better, but I was living the life of a drug dealer, money maker, someone who was on top. I forgot about him, my brother. I didn't think about him. He did 6 months and we was able to bail him out. Waiting for his release, it was 1:30 in the morning. 3 more hours passed, so I went to the correction officer's booth to check what was going on. They told me as sarcastically as possible, he's not coming home. I thought to myself, does he have another charge? Come to find out, the feds picked him up. The 6 months turned into 6 years before his trial. But before I talk about his trial, let me explain what his incarceration was like through my eyes. Out of those 6 years, my brother spent at least 3.5 in solitary confinement. We call it the box. This is a cell that is kept away from other people who are incarcerated. You're confined for 23 hours of the day. The 24th hour can be used to take a shower or have recreation. Mind you, he didn't commit an infraction to get placed in solitary confinement. The U.S. attorney justified him being there by stating that our family is similar to the Gotti crime family. And in good consciousness, he can't protect his witnesses with him being in general population. We are nothing like the Gottis. Besides our appearance and privilege, we were raised in and out of shelters on welfare, social service. New York City calls it HRA, Human Resource Administration. Born to a single, addicted mother with 4 children, we shared clothes, food, and rooms, 2 girls and 2 boys. She did the best she could to raise us, but it didn't stop our desire to want more out of life. During my brother's incarceration in the box, the pandemic hit. MDC Brooklyn, the federal jail my brother was housed at. In the dead of winter, you probably remember. It was all over the news. Federal jail practicing inhumane, torturous conditions. That's right, the jail had no heat, therefore couldn't cook, and didn't provide those housed with extra sheets, bedding, or clothing. My brother called us to tell us how cold it was and that they were only feeding him bread and cheese. We didn't know what to do. We got together and went down there to protest. My mother, sister, niece, and nephew, we were there with signs and our loudest voices, hoping our pleas would get heard. Our new mayor was there along with other celebs, family members of those housed there too. 2 months later, towards the end of spring, they turned the heat on. I didn't explain that the box serves as a double whammy. Not only are we kept from everyone, but it makes it that much harder for you to fight your case. There were plenty of days my brother was denied law library services. This was so he couldn't come up with a viable defense. I know what you're thinking. What about his lawyer? Well, we went through 4 lawyers. The first was appointed by the courts. Our first impression of her was she didn't care. Later on, I saw she did the best she could with what she had. The second was a family paid for a lawyer. My sister and I emptied our 401ks and we took up a collection. The lawyer, who was supposed to be great by his account, charged us $75,000. We came up with $40,000 and a payment plan. However, he robbed us. After 1 week, with him only seeing my brother one time for 10 minutes, he went to court and asked to be removed, stating he could no longer work with my brother because he doesn't take advice. He wanted my brother to plead guilty. The third had to be removed because of conflict of interest. And the fourth is who my brother went to trial with. His trial lasted a week and a half. My brother and his lawyer was treated terrible. The judge would stop the lawyer whenever he was making a point and tell him to move on. If my brother would consult with his lawyer, she would tell them to do it after court, so they can't make a rebuttal. Throughout trial, she showed her partiality. She would sway the jury by stating things like, does anyone want candy? Oh, my personal favorite, dinner is on us, so decide what you want to eat. She would take phone calls and make faces whenever we made a good point. But they weren't the only ones she did that to. As a family, they had to support my brother, who was fighting for his life. The judge treated us horrible. The judge wouldn't allow us in the courtroom until everyone was in there, including the jury, and then make us leave before they finished. This was every court date. We devised a plan for each one of us to take notes and compare them during the break. However, the judge sent the court officer to us to tell us if she hears paper crinkle or if we pass a note, she will throw us out of the courtroom. Also, the court doors were locked, so if you left to use the bathroom, you were out for the day. Besides that, she would have us as a family sit in the last 2 rows. Also, I noticed there wasn't one Black man on the jury. Sure, they had 3 Black women, but they were elderly, 2 Spanish men, and the rest were white men and women. Even without any victim identifying my brother, even with no physical evidence such as DNA, the only evidence they had was that my brother's cell phone was in an 8-mile radius of all the incidences that took place. And 2 people who admitted to doing the crimes were swayed and threatened by the U.S. attorney to point my brother out. January 2021, my brother was convicted of 27 counts of Hobbs Act robbery, 1 count of murder, and a count of attempted murder, 1 count of unlawful use of firearms, possession of a firearm with intent of bodily harm. Hobbs Act robbery is a federal law prohibiting extortion or robbery by wrongful use of force or fear, or the attempt of these crimes, affecting interstate or foreign commerce. This 1946 act was originally designed to target racketeering and labor disputes, which were fairly common at that time. On November 3rd, 2021, 2 weeks before my brother's birthday, 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, my brother was sentenced to life plus 84 years. The funny thing is, my brother's story is one in a million. How do we fight those who get positions of power and misuse it? How can I make sure my mom doesn't pass while my brother's incarcerated? I decided that I would need to go back to school to become a federal appeals attorney. Besides that, I have to trust God and the law, all the while making sure my family and brother stays positive. At least that's what I'd want to see through my eyes.
Thank you, Malik. Thank you. Powerful. Ooh, we'll move on to our next speaker, Sarah Cushman. Sarah?
Yes, thank you. Vividly, I remember sitting in my 12th grade humanities class. My teacher was discussing Oscar Wilde and wrote on the board, "Two men look out a window. One sees mud, the other sees the stars." I found it inconceivable at the time to look at the mud. I was an optimist, one for the stars. I had so much to look forward to, and I wasn't about to let anything upset my future plans. At that point, it was so easy to visualize what life would look like for me in 5 years. I would have a framed diploma over my Ethan Allen desk from Sacred Heart University, a pear-shaped diamond set in platinum on my ring finger. I was an optimist, but also realistic. So I knew that life wouldn't be exactly perfect, but as close to you could get it here on Earth. But then something happened, something I didn't account for in my 5-year plan. It was at a party in college that after a couple of drinks and a lot of laughter, I remember nearly nothing, but waking up and knowing that I had been sexually assaulted. And as I always did with every skinned knee, or when there was monsters hiding under my bed, I turned to my parents seeking comfort. However, I was met with questions and what I felt was blame. "Why were you at that party, Sarah Jane? Drinking's illegal. You're under 21. What are you doing? Matter of fact, why don't you go for a run and we'll come visit you next weekend and we'll look into getting you a private therapist." Well, ever the people pleaser, I didn't report the incident because I didn't want to disappoint or bring shame to my family. So I laced up my sneakers and ran. I tried to outrun the shadows and the feeling that someone was right behind me. I tried to outrun the blurred images and the sickening smell of cigarettes. I tried to outrun the feelings of disgust and shame and powerlessness. I ran and ran and ran, but I learned that day that I was never going to be able to outrun the ominous presence of my attackers that I now carried like a weight on my back. Well, running didn't work. Pretending it never happened didn't work. So exhausted after a long night of teeth-chattering nightmares and bed sheets that were soaked in sweat, I reflected back on when I tore my ACL and remembered that prescription opioids immediately took the physical pain away. I wonder if they'll take the mental pain away. Willing to try anything and not comprehending the severity of what I was about to consume, I feverishly dug into my makeup bag at the bottom of my closet and removed that bottle of oxycodone. I swallowed 2 round green pills without hesitation. Within 20 minutes, I couldn't smell them. I couldn't see their shadows. I could walk around campus without being hypervigilant. I was at peace until the pills wore off. That was just the beginning of my spiral into opioid addiction that very quickly escalated from ingesting painkillers to injecting heroin. Anything to numb, to escape, to end a life that I no longer cared about. Every day I would pray that that loaded syringe in my hand would be my last. In between periods of suicidal ideations, my life became a revolving door of detox centers that I never completed due to an insatiable heroin addiction. Well, in a fruitless attempt to satisfy that addiction, I committed 6 counts of armed robbery with a BB gun that didn't have BBs or a CO2 cartridge. But that's a whole different story. I was arrested for this crime and subsequently pled to 11 years in the New York State Department of Corrections. Well, once a Division I athlete and a National Honor Society member, I was now curled up in a ball on a cement prison floor with tears streaming down my face, identified only as inmate 12G 1011. During those early days of my incarceration, I finally understood what it meant to look down at the mud. Life as I knew it had ended, and I had no idea what to expect. Scared and uncertain, I now had nothing but time to contemplate my new future. But I was incapable of visualizing what life in prison would look like, much less my future. I was consumed with hopelessness, paralyzed with fear. But ever supportive, my family and friends encouraged me to use this experience for good and come out a better person. Yeah, all right. I smiled and nodded, echoing their sentiments, not wishing to consider what a felony conviction actually meant for those childhood dreams. But somewhere deep inside me was still that fighter, that competitor that I had once been. So I knew I just had to try one more shot. So I started college classes in 2013. Students from Marymount, Barnard, Columbia, and Pace University filled half of the seats allotted in my maximum security prison classroom. But learning alongside my classmates from both sides of the razor wire transformed my mindset. For the first time since my incarceration began, I dreamt of brighter days ahead. Appreciative of the gift I had been given, I absorbed everything I read and taught. Well, I obtained my associate's degree while at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility, but was transferred to another facility, Albion, before I could finish and obtain my bachelor's degree. But that setback didn't stop me though, because while at my new prison, I worked as a peer health educator for Pastone. This shifted my focus from sociology to public health. I studied healthcare inequity and the history of epidemics, including HIV and AIDS. The latter forced me to confront my own unconscious biases against such stigmas and challenged me to be more compassionate. It inspired me to be more culturally humble and to recognize that simply because of where I was raised or the color of my skin, I was afforded opportunities that others were not. I met strong and resilient women who were living with HIV because they couldn't speak openly to their providers or didn't have equitable access to healthcare. So I promised myself that once released, I would continue my education and fight for compassionate, client-centered healthcare, regardless of your sexual orientation, race, gender, financial status. Well, I carried this outlook with me since leaving prison. I've been home a year now. My education has helped me to rise above my incarceration, but it's been my work in the community that has provided me with this new perspective. I'm currently a junior pursuing a degree in public health at the University of Rochester, while working at Trillium Health Center, a community-based health. But more than that, I'm a hopeful woman, a present daughter, an active aunt, and a survivor who's made the choice to live a sober life of integrity and gratitude. Because without my Heavenly Father, my family and support system, and the strength of the individuals that I met while in prison, and programs like Circles of Support that have given me the courage to speak my truth without shame or apology, I would not be where I'm at today. Since Circles of Support, this has been my first time that I've been able to openly talk about my assault. And it's also positioned me to be an agent of change in the community. So while the stars may give us hope, the mud has the capacity to make us stronger and even a little wiser for that experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for such a touching, personal and private story, one of triumph and of tragedy, but definitely a journey. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is another Sarah, Sarah Watts. I want to bring on Sarah Watts.
Good evening, everyone. I am a runner. In other words, I do the footwork from the outside for the person on the inside. This evening, I would like to share with all of you about the cycle of the runner. My journey began way back in the 70s. And much like myself, the runner is a person who is not only connected to current or former inmates who are family members, but also juveniles within our neighborhoods, people we work with, and even friends. We have become their lifeline and their link to the outside world. Why? Because they are behind the wall. As a runner, I have put much aside for many of them in order that they be encouraged and have packages sent to them, such as commissary funds and phone accessibility, in order to remain in contact with those of us on the outside who really do care. Yet, I will say that those who are behind the wall do need our support and love. But I had to use wisdom, because if not, I would have been very cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, because this help was done while my family was being neglected and of much needed necessities ourselves, like paying the rent or the mortgage, light bills, or our own phones remaining on. Does this sound easy to you? Or can you imagine yourself doing this? From my heart, I would like to share how difficult it can be and has been as a parent, sibling, spouse, an aunt, uncle, a friend, or a child, whether you're a young child or an adult. Running can wear a person emotionally out, mentally, physically, and even financially, if there is no plan in place to use or to guide us, to help us charter what can be very turbulent waters. Follow me on my uncharted journey of making visits into the penal system. This is what a visit one day will look like. We face a 4 to 6 hour drive with food that weighs about 35 pounds, which took almost a whole day and a half to put together. We arrive to have to stand in a line to be processed about 1 hour. It takes a good 30 minutes to store our personal items in lockers because nothing can go with you into the visiting room. We then proceed through a metal detector and make our way to the visitor's room. And depending on if the count has been done yet for the day, you could wait an hour for your loved one to come out. And that visit can run between 2 and 4 hours. It's a cold, early Saturday morning, and I'm with my mother. And we're on our way to see one of my brothers, and he has accommodations at Harvey Prison for men. I don't know who's worse, the women or male guards. They make you feel so dirty and violated, and as if you did the crime. But I'm so concerned about him in there, from the rumors on the street or rumors on TV that you watch and hear, that I can't have my mom doing this alone, even though I have other brothers and sisters that could help. Now it's a different Saturday morning, and I'm on my way to pick up my nephews so that they can see their dad, and my husband is driving. Not to mention I'm pregnant and uncomfortable. And though my husband doesn't say a lot, I know that he does this to help me because he cares for me. But I stop and I wonder, am I taking advantage of him because I automatically included him and never discussed how he felt about even going? Well, again, you know I'm a runner. A different day, a different correction facility. Today I'm visiting my uncle, who always made me pork chops with onions and home fries. He misses our talks and he needs me to bring him some clothes and things, but he doesn't know how afraid I am of the system. And I'm not even sure if he really cares, as long as he gets the packages that he asked for. Well, this is a different day. It's Sunday. And I just left church and I'm on my way with my daughter to see a friend's son at Don't Be Late with the Date House of Detention, whose mom said that she's not going to see him at all. She says that she will see him if and when he gets out. Why? Because she doesn't care and cannot be bothered. But it really has to do with hurt, shame, and blame, and not knowing how to navigate through these uncharted waters. Because again, These are new waters for many families like mine who has no plan in place. Though many of our loved ones have been branded by the system to accomplish nothing, to become nothing, and never amount to anything but a failure, I choose to believe that this is a clarion call to all visitors and all villagers, and all hands must be on deck. What a journey I've been on for a while in my lifetime. And yes, I'm still running. And yes, I'm still mad as two fish out outside of a fishbowl. And you ask me, why are you mad? Really? Because I'm a runner and do not intend to stop running. But my kin, I had to stop and wonder, why am I doing so much running for some who will not even think about changing? Besides that, our family is split and hardly speaking. And mama, she's gonna send the money. And it's money she doesn't have, which means one or more bills are gonna be paid late or not paid at all. Because without thought, we are moved by our feelings to help. But let's not get it twisted. There's nothing wrong with sending out packages, but we shouldn't send out more with little coming back. So I had to ask myself, when will this end? And how will it end? And I answered myself. And I said, Sarah, when you put a plan in place with the family, and this is the plan, I won't omit one bill being paid, nor will I pay them late. But what I will do is minimize the incoming calls from the prison, minimize the packages going out, reduce the money on the phone and the commissary accounts, and monitor how many visits should be made. Because failing to plan makes it obvious that we're planning to fail. So let's revamp some things and come together, because I'm tired from all the running that I've done over the last 35 or more years. There is and can be success in life for the incarcerated when they come out, for their families, and even for the runner. And this is what has to be done. Family, we gotta come to the table, and we gotta have that come to Jesus moment where we sit down and talk with one another to decide how we're gonna handle things to keep a roof over our heads. So listen, come on down with me, sit at the table, and let's have a talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Our next speaker, Sean Sevatal.
Thank you so much, Mr. Johnson. God, please, I'm begging you, let me go home today. I deserve another fighting chance at life. I did the crime, and I served my time. I developed a plan, and now I'd like to put that plan into motion. Hey, 16 bed on the pack up. Fear, anxiety, excitement, hopeful, nervous, lonely, and happiness all played a role in the mixed emotions I had leading up to that razor-wired fence at Fishkill Correctional Facility. The officer at the gate said, I want you to take a deep breath through your nose before I open the gate, and then exhale. The officer slowly unlocked the electric sliding gate and said, step across the 12-inch yellow line. As he closed the 20-foot-high fence, I did just that, and the officer repeated, now take a deep breath through your nose. Smells a whole lot sweeter, huh? I have to admit the statement Officer Bailey made was one I'll never forget. How can air on one side of a fence smell different? It was not the air, but what the air represented. Now, with $40, a Metro card that the state provided me with, I was off to the Beacon train station. The crackling of the train PA came on. Southbound train to a new beginning will be arriving on platform A momentarily. Now, that's not really what the announcer said, but in my mind, that's what I heard. The train to me represented the vehicle that was going to take me home to start building my utopia. Honestly, I do not remember much from the ride, except that I wanted to take a long hot shower and get the smell of incarceration off of me. For those who have spent time in prison, I think you will agree it is a very distinctive smell that you cannot explain, but one that internally to all individuals has different reminders to all. The short-term goal is to report to parole within 24 hours of release. To me, parole's easy. Show up when told, make curfew, negative toxicologies, be gainfully employed, and most importantly, pay your fees. Think about what I just said, folks. Parole easy? How would I know this? That's right, I've done this before. What I should be thinking is, Sean, what's going to be different this time? Well, let's just take it one day at a time and remember what I had to endure. Progress, not perfection, and remember that I do not have to do this alone. At the same time, I must be willing to ask for help, because if no one knows, no one cares. Upon meeting my PO, she told me that I could not go to my family's home. When I asked for a reason, she simply stated, I do not like your mother's attitude. I feel you need to earn living in a home again. Internally, I wanted to call her every name in the book. But remember, I came home with a plan, and now that little voice said, what's going to be different, Sean? I was not going to let her push my buttons, nor was I going to give her the power to revoke all my hard work and take my freedom. So I simply said, whatever you say. The look on her face was priceless. She was stuck for a moment and then replied, you'll be going to the Plantation Motor Inn, which I know is a very seedy area of Island Park, Long Island. In my mind, I am saying, I can't go home to a loving family who's willing to give me a second chance. But instead, they'd rather use the taxpayers' money to stay at a 2-floor motel. So off I went with my stick and bandana to my new residence. Upon arriving at the 2-story dilapidated villa, I noticed the laundry drying out of the windows, the fast food wrappers dancing in the wind, the man getting out of his car, rolling an oxygen tank and smoking a cigarette. Great. I wondered, what's my room going to look like? Just as I thought. Urine-stained carpets, cigarette burns in the comforter, TV with only 3 channels, 2 of which were in Spanish. So when you ask what my short-term goal is, to do whatever it takes to get out. I started that night on Craigslist looking for jobs. Would you believe that at 3 o'clock in the morning, I got a call from a gourmet deli owner asking if I could be there at 6 a.m. So with no car, too early for public transportation, and a very limited supply of money, I walked 1 hour and 45 minutes to my new place of employment, where I then had to stand on my feet for an additional 10 hours. But I loved every minute of it. For me, this is where it all started. An honest day's work, an honest day's pay. I will tell you, I took the bus home, one, because my feet were hurting so badly, and secondly, I needed to make curfew, remembering that no one has the power to take the sunshine, nor my freedom. After a 3-month stay at the motel, never missing a day's work, group, and meeting all the requirements of parole, I was now allowed to move home. The day I left, I cried with joy, because there were times I felt like saying, catch me if you can. I could go outside or knock on any door and get whatever I needed. Thankfully, it was only a thought and never became a reality. So now home with my family, feeling a little safer in my environment, I put my plan that started while I was in prison into play. I'm going back to school. Someone took a chance on me and showed me there was more to life than insanity. And now it's time to pay it forward. I applied to 5 major colleges in pursuit of obtaining a degree in social work. Only 1 responded for obvious and not so obvious reasons, but 1 was all I needed. 11 months after my release, I was now enrolled at a Delphi University social work program. This was not easy. First, I had to get past the board of directors because of my background. This consisted of a 5-page essay and an interview with admissions. Throughout the interview, I felt my back in the courtroom, waiting for the jury to come back, stomach turning, sweaty palms, and the fear of my dream being denied. I am happy to say I was approved. The University of Adelphi, after hearing my story, afforded me a $13,000 a year scholarship. I have to maintain a 3.5 GPA or I would forfeit their generosity. 2 years later, I had graduated with my bachelor's degree in social worker, summa cum laude, making my dreams a reality. But I was not done, not even close. If a good Sean and a bad Sean gets into a fight, who wins? The one who wants it more. Go get your master's, Sean. I decided to finish what I started, knowing I was building a foundation for the rest of my life. Today, I'm currently finishing my last year of my master's at Adelphi. Additionally, I'm interning at Network Support Services, which I have to say is the most rewarding experience of my life. Along with the circles of support, the J.C. Flowers Foundation, and most importantly, the guidance of Linda Steele, I was able to enhance any fears I may have had with my skills in public speaking. Here, I am given the opportunity to pay it forward, but more importantly, give back what was so freely given to me, helping men and women who are transitioning back into society in search of a new beginning. No longer are they referred by as a number, but now their name. With a debt now paid to society, they are in search of their dream. For most that I've spoken to, their dream is a chance at a job, a chance at a place to live, a chance of being a productive member of society, a chance at life. There are a lot of obstacles for those who have been incarcerated. My question to you is, has there ever been a point in your life where you've needed someone to take a chance on you? Remember, I was once a number until someone took a chance on me. There are many more people just like you looking for people, you in helping making their dreams a reality.
Thank you, Sean. Bravo, bravo. The challenges of parole and reentry trumped by resiliency and powerful decision-making. Our next speaker is Nawana Tucker. Nawana?
Good evening, everyone. Once again, my name is Nawana Tucker. I am a child of God, wife, mother, daughter, and sister and friend. I realize as a woman, we tend to wear many hats. Today, I'm going to share with you my passion for fighting for justice while bringing people together. I am married to Curtis Tucker. Curtis has been incarcerated for 33 years for a crime he did not commit. Curtis has been, unfortunately, one of the victims that was killed was Curtis's cousin, who would never get a chance to see his daughter grow up because she was 1 month old when her father was murdered. God would have it that after 33 years, Curtis would meet the daughter of his slain cousin through the work I do as a community leader for releasing aging people in prison. Curtis and I met when we were teenagers. Little did we know we would embark on a long fight for justice for his freedom. Over the years, I have studied and learned how to fight the criminal justice system, understand the unbalance of the legal scale that is modern day slavery. There were ups and downs, but just like Moses had Aaron and Hur, we had each other when we felt like giving up. I invite you to be a spectator in the gallery of my personal courtroom as I share our story, our journey, the long fight for justice, the Curtis Tucker story, to help ourselves and others that they may have that may have encountered blind justice. I have always had a passion for investigative work. I enjoyed watching Perry Mason, Hill Street Blues, Cagney and Lacey. In the late 90s, I started watching court TV shows on how to investigate and take apart a case to get justice. I would further my skills by becoming a police administrative aide for the New York City Police Department. My next task would be to work for the Department of Corrections. And lastly, I would earn my bachelor's in criminal justice human services from the University of Phoenix. I realized that I cannot be one-sided in this quest because there are victims and offenders, and each have a story. I do believe that if an individual commits a crime, they should be punished for the crime. But what happens to the innocent individual who becomes a pawn in the legal system that states innocent until proven guilty? What happens to the victims and their families? Is there a way to fight for justice for the innocent, as well as become a mediator for the victim and families, as well as the offender? I would have friends and families asking for help, locating someone, and once I was able to give results, be it good or bad, I realized I love doing this, especially when new beginnings were able to heal, reconnect, and reconcile. There were many times I just wanted to throw my hands up and say, I'm over it. But God would not let that happen. At times, I felt like I was on a yellow brick road, and on my way, He would drop people in my path. I have had many tin mans, scarecrows, and lions to help me on this journey I call the long fight for justice, the Curtis Tucker story. The yellow brick road was paved for my calling, allowing me to take every nugget and deposit in it into my fight for justice for Curtis. Crime that would have Curtis spend 33 years in prison had divided the family to the point where it was not discussed too often. Yet there was always that thought of how his cousin's daughter was doing since she was only 1 month old when her dad was murdered. This was so touchy because Curtis had 2 young children of his own. The difference was Curtis's children were able to grow with their dad through prison walls, but his cousin's daughter could only rely on the stories that were told to her. Last year, I was introduced to releasing aging people in prison. After attending a few rallies, I was asked to join their organization as a community leader. Here, I would learn the true meaning of fighting for justice for all people, victims, offenders, innocent, and the communities. I took the assignment seriously, since I would meet people who would share their stories about being victims or had a loved one incarcerated. As an investigator, the key is to be an attentive listener and observer. Some would call it being nosy. I call it getting answers for the long fight for justice for the Curtis Tucker story. I was getting my hair done and overheard my stylist on the phone. Immediately, I realized that she was speaking to someone that was incarcerated. In my businesslike way, I asked, "Were you speaking to someone who's incarcerated?" When she said yes, I told her what kind of work I do as a community leader for prison reform. One day, I received a text from a young lady asking for help with a loved one who was wrongfully arrested. The hairstylist had given her my information. What makes this story extraordinary was because when I saw the young lady's name, I became curious because the name was the name that I knew to be of my husband's slain cousin's daughter. Investigator Tucker had to be on her P's and Q's. I contacted the young lady and I asked what she knew about me and what was she looking for from me. Deep down, I believe this was my husband's slain cousin's daughter. After the conversation, I was convinced, but as a great investigator, I continued asking pertinent questions. Once I was totally convinced, I explained to the young lady I had something I needed to share with her, but it could not be over the phone. We decided to meet up that evening. We prayed first. Then I asked, did a friend tell her anything about my husband? She said, the only thing she said is that you do the work because your husband has been incarcerated for a long time. I told her the reason I wanted to sit face to face because I wanted to talk about her husband and my husband and her father. I told her my husband had been incarcerated for a crime he did not commit for 33 years. Immediately, the young lady stops me and asks if my last name was Tucker. My next question would be, do you know who I am? Her response would be, now I do. And I will be 33 years old, and he has been incarcerated all this time. We would talk for 3 hours at a diner in Brooklyn. This young lady would be the victim's daughter. Faith would have that the young lady and my husband would speak with a newfound hope and building a relationship that they both were denied because of a cowardless murderer. In closing, I would like to share a quote from my fellow classmate, Nkosi, from Touchdown NYC. Nkosi said, if we want restorative justice, it has to start in our families and in our homes, end quote. Find justice would prefer for America to see us watch a video with a knee on our neck and in a chokehold and receive no justice in the streets and courtrooms. Thank you for sitting in my gallery as a spectator as I shared our story, The Long Fight for Justice, the Curtis Tucker story. I will end leaving you with a quote. Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. Maya Angelou.
Thank you, Nawana. Thank you. Shout out to advocacy work, community work, to redemption, to rap. Thank you. Thank you so much. Our next speaker, our last speaker, last but not least, is Daniel Kelly.
Thank you, bro. It's crazy. I should have been arranging the details of my high school senior trip. Instead, I was being arraigned on 2 counts of second-degree murder and an array of charges stemming from robberies my older brother and I had committed. The year was 1990, and I, 17 years old, decided to quit school and pursue fast money. See, it seemed to me at the time that all the girls liked guys who had money, dudes who drove a car, dudes who had jewelry or an extensive wardrobe. They got all the action. Me, I didn't check any of those boxes, so I decided to get myself a job at McDonald's in hopes of making myself a more interesting catch. I would literally angle my locker door and my body so I can sneak my work uniform in so nobody would recognize that all too recognizable gray shirt and striped pants. I was miserable. I couldn't talk to my parents about what I was going through because they had those values that wouldn't allow for them to pay $100 for sneakers. Our relationship became secretive and I became resentful. My older brother, who had done a previous prison sentence as a child, would playfully laugh at my attempts to be fly while working at McDonald's. Feeling inadequate and miserable, I simply walked off the job after a few months. My brother got tired of me asking him for money, so one day, after telling me to stop begging, he showed me a handgun and told me, as long as you got this, you never be broke. One of the most important things to me at that time was to never let my big brother think I was scared of anything. I didn't want him to think I was a punk, so I took the gun and went on to do the unthinkable with him. By the time the dust settled, 2 people lay dead and 1 person was seriously injured. I clearly remember being more afraid of my parents finding out about my arrest than the actual police themselves. I was fingerprinted, photographed, and placed on a bus headed to Rikers Island. Life as I knew it was ending, and the 22-year to life sentence I was given was just beginning. My hard new state boots and stiff green uniform literally screamed New Jack. My last name and ID number was printed on a label and ironed onto all the pants, shirt, and coat I was given by the state. I remember using a pen to cross out my fresh 92 number because I didn't want guys to think I was new. New brought with it predators and challenges that I truly wasn't ready for. But as time passed, though, it's funny, I didn't find it as important to conceal my ID number because I was getting more familiarized with the ways of the penitentiary. The older residents used to tell me never refer to another resident as an inmate. According to them, an inmate was a name given to guys by their captors. It was a hated term, one that should never be used by anyone other than the guards. I embraced those teachable moments because they showed me that I would do an easier bid if I paid attention to what I was listening to. They would serve to make my present experience less difficult. I sought out and valued opportunities wherein I could learn something new. Years into my prison sentence, I got the opportunity wherein I can learn something from an outside group that would come in. This group was named the Spiritus Christi Organization. It was a church that was located in Rochester, New York. These volunteers posed a question to the group one day. Dave, a Spiritus Christi volunteer, was the evening's moderator. Dave was an older guy. He was tall, unassuming, with a firm handshake. Dave said to us, he said, we're each going to try and exercise. He said that we're all going to describe who we are without mentioning what we do. This was pretty tough for me because I wasn't used to defining myself outside of my prison program title. When it was my turn to address the group, I remember starting off by saying what I wasn't. I wasn't a rat. I wasn't a rapist. I didn't victimize women or children or old people. I thought I was rolling when Dave, he stopped me saying, whoa, 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 hold up. That's cool in here, but who were you before all this? He used himself as an example to point out that his hobby was woodworking, but he was a devoted father and husband. And his wife and children valued his thoughtfulness and dependability. As intelligent as I thought I was, I sat quietly and really thought about the idea of self-definition. He was this old white dude telling a convicted murderer the importance of being able to properly define himself. I had already sat in front of 3 parole boards, so I figured, I got this. Little did I know I didn't have this. This was something I had yet to discover for myself. Defining myself outside of my criminal acts was something I had to be with. I had to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. I wasn't told to pack up on the day I was scheduled to be released from prison. I gave away everything aside from my pictures and important paperwork. The day I had been waiting for my whole life was finally here. I felt like a politician that morning, glad-handed my friends and trying to provide hope to others. Of course, there were guys who wanted my more high-end items like cassette tapes and my radio, but they had to settle for soap, deodorant, and snacks. I was all set to go when this guy asked me, so how does it feel to be a civilian? I used to think there was no way I could ever be a civilian. Civilians only worked there. They were correctional officers and counselors. Not only did I work there, I slept there and woke up there every day. Now that I would no longer sleep there, I couldn't be defined by what I did or where I lived. Dave's exercise on self-definition meant that I control how I'm defined, not my past actions. Words have power, so describing myself now takes on a more empowering tone. My defining moment has been an ongoing one for some time now. Today, I am a civilian. I pay taxes. I'm a voter. I abide by the laws of the land and try to carve out a bit of happiness for myself and my loved ones every day. It's an all-access pass to humanity that I value today. An all-access pass that was given to me through the power of discovery and self-definition. And I'm humbled. I'm thankful, not merely for my release, but for the opportunity to speak about the transformational power of learning. I'm thankful for every outlet, the Raising My Voice workshops in Linda Steele, the JC Circles of Support organization, the Spiritus Christi Church, who all taught me the importance of properly raising my voice through the art of storytelling. This isn't some turkey dinner, but what it is an open sharing of experiences, of old traumas and new victories. My reintroduction to society has been one of service, whereas I give when I once took. My Thanksgiving takes on a richer meaning in that I give thanks every day, not simply on the last week of November.
Thank you, brother. I didn't know she was finished. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Daniel. Thank you to all of the speakers. Very powerful stories, impactful stories. And me and brother Daniel, we go way back. You know, we've spent some time as youngsters inside of the system together, and it's so inspiring to see you right here and hear your story as well. So thank you to everyone. Everyone, we're not over yet. We have one more speaker. But I just want to say that, you know, the power of storytelling, as you all have witnessed tonight, is very powerful, and it's something that carry us through difficult times, through challenges that we face, but also to get us through the day sometime. And it's so fitting that at the end of, you know, Thanksgiving, going into the Christmas season, coming into the new holiday season, that we could get up here and talk about family, we could talk about truth, we could talk about triumph, we could talk about strength. Thank you for spending your evening with us, and I would like to turn it over to Chris Flowers.
Thank you very much, Rawson, for leading this panel, and to all of our panelists with their absolutely amazing stories. I'm Chris Flowers from the J.C. Flowers Foundation, and I would also like to thank all of you who've listened in and joined this discussion tonight. Thank you to our speakers for your amazing stories and for your vulnerability and courage, and we wish all of you the best in your continued journeys. Also, we would like to thank our Circles of Support staff, Linda, Lila, and Thomas, and our excellent volunteer coaches and the places of worship who support Raising My Voice, particularly the Church of the Heavenly Rest, the Church of the Epiphany, and St. Paul's Church in the village of Flatbush. If you're interested in having a Raising My Voice graduate speak with your group, please contact Rebecca at rebecca@jcflowersfoundation.org. Thank you for joining us, and have a good evening.
Amazing.